7 key moments from Trump's UN speech. For more politics coverage and analysis, sign up for Here's the Deal, our weekly politics newsletter here. https://www.pbs.org/newsletters. When President Donald Trump returned to the United Nations General Assembly on Tuesday, his speech underscored a familiar opposition to the mission of the United Nations. During his first term, he dismissed the United Nations as just a club. https://x.com/real-Donald-Trump, status 813-500-12353490176. For countries' representatives to have a good time. Years on, he doesn't seem to be any bigger of a fan of the global body. Since returning to the Oval Office, Trump has scaled back U.S. support of the UN. This includes withdrawing the U.S. https://www.whitehouse.gov/2025/02, withdrawing the United States from and ending funding to certain United Nations organizations and reviewing United States support to all international organizations. From the UN Human Rights Council again, and pulling funding for some of the body's key programs, such as the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, UNRW, an agency that provides aid to Palestinian refugees. https://www.pbs/newshour/show UNRW vows to keep providing aid to Gaza despite Israeli ban. Most recently, the Trump administration announced the U.S. wouldn't participate. https://www.amnestyusa.org/press releases seeks to elude human rights scrutiny by not participating in UN human rights review, in a UN review of the country's human rights record. Early into his nearly hour-long remarks of files, at 9:30 p.m. on Tuesday, Trump said the global body is not even coming close to living up to its potential. All they seem to do is write a really strongly worded letter and then never follow that letter up, the president said. It's empty words, and empty words don't solve war. The only thing that solves war and wars is action. Trump's wandering speech had no shortage of false claims and contradictions. He touted peace while telling drug cartels he would blow them out of existence. He questioned the purpose of the UN's existence, but later in the morning told the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, https://youtube.com/watch/vv, that the U.S. is behind the United Nations 100%. But I am so behind it because the potential for peace at this institution is great, he said. Here's are some highlights from Trump's UN speech, a teleprompter malfunction from the start. Watch the clip in the player above. While opening his speech, Trump told the room that the teleprompter wasn't working. https://www.youtube.com/watch because someone was operating it was in big trouble. He later mocked the UN for having a bad escalator. Trump claimed he has ended 7 wars while the UN offered empty words. Watch the clip in the player above. Trump, who is campaigning for a Nobel Peace Prize, boasted how he, and not the UN, has been a key player in settling global conflicts. https://www.youtube.com/watch because we were key players in what happened in the past, have not been wars or have yet to end. https://www.factcheck.org/2025-08 addressing Trump's claims about ending multiple wars. This week alone, Britain, Canada, Australia, Portugal, and France all www.factcheck.org/2025/endeavoring Trump's ending multiple wars. Despite opposition from the U.S. and Israel, Trump said this upswell of support for Palestine would encourage continued conflict. Featuring www.factcheck.org/France recognizes Palestinian statehood ahead of UN General Assembly, which carried out the October 7th attack almost 2 years ago that set off the war in Gaza. Trump urges Europe to step it up against Russia. Watch the clip in the player above. Trump said if Russia does not end its invasion of Ukraine, he is prepared to impose a strong round of powerful tariffs. https://www.youtube.com/awe. He then told European nations to step it up and stop importing Russian oil. Trump tells countries they're going to hell over migration. Watch the clip in the player above. Trump scolded representatives for their country's immigration policies, while upholding his mass deportation agenda in the U.S. as the best way to address the crisis of uncontrolled migration. This led the president to say, "I'm really good at this stuff. Your countries are going to hell." https://www.youtube.com/watch the clip in the player above. Trump described climate change as the greatest con job ever perpetrated on the world. Watch the clip in the player above. The U.S. president claimed that scientific predictions made by UN bodies were wrong and blasted wind farms. https://ipcube feature youtube.b and other renewable energy projects. He instead encouraged countries to buy fossil fuels from the U.S. As tensions between Brazil and U.S. mount, their leaders give contrasting speeches. As is tradition, Brazil led off the first day of speeches. Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, or Lula as he's better known, warned that multilateralism or international cooperation is at a new crossroads. Throughout the world, anti-democratic forces are trying to subjugate institutions and stifle freedoms. They worship violence, praise ignorance, act as physical and digital militias, and restrict the press, Lula said to an interpreter in his nearly 19-minute speech. https://www.www.web/whats. Trump, who delivered his speech right after Lula, levied a 50% tariff on many Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro, a Trump ally, who was earlier this month found guilty of a coup plot. Though Trump criticized Brazil in his remarks, he did at one point strike a softer tone. https://what/the/RXRV803P2Q. Watch the clip in the player above. The U.S. president mentioned that the two leaders briefly spoke as they passed each other on the path to the main speaker podium. "I saw him, he saw me, and we embraced," Trump said. "But he seemed like a very nice man, actually. He liked me, I liked him," Trump said, prompting chatter and a smattering of applause from global leaders in the room. "We actually agreed that we would meet next week," Trump said. Though he didn't provide details on this possible meetup, the U.S. president quickly returned to his criticism of Lula's country, saying, "Brazil is doing poorly." In an interview Monday, Lula told PBS NewsHour co-anchor Amna Nawaz that people ask him whether he likes Trump. www.pbs.org/newshour/Brazil's Lula pushes for civilized relationship with Trump. Watch the segment in the player above. "It's not an issue of whether I like him or not," he said. "What matters is that he's the head of state of the United States, and I'm the head of state in Brazil. And as two heads of state, we have to respect each other, because we were elected democratically by the people of our countries, and we need to give support to these people and to govern them the best way possible," he added. Find more of our 2025 UN General Assembly coverage. Watch live. Day 1 of the 2025 United Nations General Assembly. https://newshour/world/watch live Day 1 of the 2025 United Nations General Assembly. Watch. Trump escalates criticism of UN in first General Assembly address since re-election. https://newshour/watch live Trump addresses UN General Assembly for first time since re-election. Watch. What to expect at this week's UN General Assembly meetings. https://newshour/world What to expect at this week's UN General Assembly meetings. Watch. Brazil's Lula pushes for civilized relationship with U.S. amid tensions with Trump. https://newshour/Brazil's Lula pushes for civilized relationship with U.S. amid tensions with Trump. We're not going anywhere. Stand up for truly independent, trusted news that you can count on.